My name is Abby, and I'm a program coordinator with the Shared Use Mobility Center. Today, we're talking with Dean Harris from the Western Reserve Transit Authority, or WRTA for short, about the new AV1 program. The AV1 program isn't currently on the ground yet, but we look forward to hearing about how the service came to be and what roadblocks are standing in the way. The AV1 project is funded through the Federal Transit Administration's Accelerating Innovative Mobility, or AIM program, alongside the Enhancing Life with Automated Transportation for Everyone, or ELATE grant. Dean is here to discuss today how the AV1 program came to be and answer some of the questions we have about implementation, community engagement, and lessons learned. Thank you for being here with us today, Dean. To get us started, can you please introduce yourself, WRTA, and the AV1 project?
So I'm Dean Harris, the CEO for WRTA. WRTA is located in Youngstown, Ohio. We have about 47 large buses and about 24 small buses, and we carry about 2 million passengers a year on our regular service.
Great. What originally inspired WRTA to pursue the AV program?
So we work with a group called CalStart, and they like doing projects with us. And somebody that worked there mentioned that they had a few. We have a partner, VTA, out in California, and they were kind of interested in doing an autonomous project. And I'm always interested in anything new and inspiring that can help transit in any way, because we're always looking for ways to make sure people can get mobility. And they proposed putting this grant together, and we put together our little project of what area we want to serve. So like we wanted to serve a smaller city, and VTA was going to be the largest city, and show how autonomous vehicle can work in our communities and with our side because of the weather, and also how that interacts with people with mobility issues also.
And we talked a little bit beforehand, before this recording that the world might see, that there's some barriers standing in the way to deploying the AV1 service. Can you talk about those barriers or gaps that you hoped, or that are standing in the way of starting the AV1 program?
Sure. So this project's been going on for quite a few years, from the time we got the grant to now. Of course, the first thing that we ran into was COVID, was causing issues, which then caused supply chain issues. So the original award we made to the provider that was going to run the service and also provide the vehicle, at the time was TransDev, now it's First Transit. I think that's the way it goes. And the vehicle they were going to use, because of the supply chain issues, could not meet Buy America. So we had a gap of time there that caused us to have to reshuffle what we did. Fortunately for us, WRTA already had a procurement on the table for us buying electric vehicles, because our vehicle is electric. So we had one on order. So we took that vehicle, and instead of us taking it, we transferred it over to the AV project, autonomous project. And because it was a different vehicle than the original one, the autonomous stack provider, Perone, had to redevelop their system to fit this new vehicle, and which delayed the project some more. And then once we got the vehicle on site, we found this gap continued because it ran into two issues. The vehicle itself had issues with it'd go what we call limp mode. So something would trigger the safety systems on the electric bus to shut down and not let the bus go very fast. Safety issue, of course. So we took it off the road. We thought we had it fixed. Then we kind of found out that it was being triggered by the AV provider's equipment, because when we turned it back on, the mode came back in place. And we've been making various fixes for very many months, well over a year now, actually. So we had our kickoff back in August of 2020. August of 2024 is when we kicked off this project, when we thought it was going to be working. And here we are in November 25 and still having the same issues. So it's kind of short 2, 3, 4 year snapshot of what we've gone through so far.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's always difficult to run into those roadblocks. And in terms of implementing the service, were there any specific issues or challenges that WRTA was trying to solve with AV technology?
So the only one we're technically trying to solve was to make sure that how someone on a mobility device or mobility issues could get on a vehicle that was in autonomous mode. I don't know if we'll truly solve that because of the way it's working. We had to have a driver on the vehicle at all times. So they're there to assist. And the type of service that we envision of having it, which is a fixed route, it's shuttle-ish type thing, but it's still a fixed route on streets. But has predetermined stops. What we're finding with the autonomous portion is that doesn't work very well when you don't know where somebody's getting off and don't know where someone's getting picked up. So the safety driver has a lot of interaction with the vehicle to disengage it, to pick those people up, and then just go back into autonomous service. So I think what we found out from this is, at least personally, I do not think fixed routes service for autonomous systems is probably the best case use for it right now. So I think what we've learned with where we're at is that is one of the issues we're going to have and have had is trying to keep it in autonomous mode once we do get it working because of those issues.
And we know that the vehicle isn't launched yet officially, but have you gathered any feedback or insights from the community about the AV service or gathered some of their perceptions at all?
So a little bit, because we do have another vehicle in service when it's not running or it's running without the autonomous on. Most people haven't really paid too much attention to what type of vehicle and what it's doing. The driver of the vehicle does tell them that it's autonomous. When it did operate autonomous for 2 weeks, so we only had that small window when it was actually working like it's designed to do. And most people didn't really care all that much. We're hoping once we launch it and we actually do a full press presentation and start having, we're going to have some local officials right along with it to try and generate more interest. We also have a survey we're going to do to kind of get the feeling, how people actually feel about it. But just right now, it's anecdotal that most of our passengers, to them, it's just a bus.
Right.
Which is what it should be. They shouldn't have to worry about whether it's going to work or not or getting where they're going.
Yeah, exactly. The human aspect paired with the AV aspect just makes for an all-around safer trip. The passengers may not see, but it still makes for an interesting ride. And speaking about how the AV is on a fixed route, can you talk a little bit about how that route was decided, or did it replace, like a regular bus, or is it a brand new route? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. So the genesis of the route goes back prior to even asking for the grant we got. The city of Youngstown got a build grant at the time to restructure their streets. And one of the components that they had is they brought us on board as a partner is to do autonomous shuttles. So we actually had an autonomous shuttle in that project. And there was 2 routes. And the route we're using was designed to connect downtown with the university and with the hospital. So we took that same basic route. We had to make some modifications, mostly to accommodate the flow of the vehicle, because there was many talks of trying to pull in parking lots and turn around, try to make short little route a little shorter. But when we just ended up basically keeping the first part of it, which is going from downtown up to the university, and then the hospital's off a couple streets over, so it just makes a loop around the hospital, come back down. Still about a mile, just a little over a mile. Didn't really change the parameters of our concerns, because the original concern is, will the vehicle be able to be out in service for 12 hours? We found out that it probably could, but we do a half-hour charge up in the middle of the day to just make sure there doesn't run out of energy to our fuel to do the route. But that's the biggest concern was the range of the vehicle.
You mentioned too at the beginning of your answer about the funding and how that kind of helped you pick which route. would use the autonomous vehicle. Can you speak a little bit more about the roles of the two grants that I mentioned, AIM and ELATE, and how they kind of help shape the service beyond what route was being replaced?
So ELATE is the name of our project that's funded by the AIM grant. So it's
Ah, okay.
one of the same. Um, so our premise again was we wanted to test the technology in a smaller urbanized area and for mobility devices. So we really tried to design the route that we kind of felt would kind of that needed access to individuals that needed to get to big destinations. So university is a big destination, and of course the hospital is a bigger destination for our passengers. So with those, we felt that for our area, might generate the most rides. The other autonomous project that we got that was through the SMART project with the city, it just went up and down it's called Federal, but it's our main street, so the dead center of town, and it only ran for 4 months. So we don't have a lot of information on how well it did and what it could have done because it just was, and they didn't promote it, so there weren't a lot of riders. We don't know if it actually served its purpose. So hopefully with ours, which we'll have a whole year once we start, or about a year, we'll have better data and people will actually know it's there. So it's really just getting the word out and let people know it's there. We're hoping that will, and plus the novelty of it, that maybe people will want to come ride it because everybody wants to see what the new technology is. So we're hoping we'll get some non-riders coming over and checking out, which might give us a different perspective on the service.
Yeah. And you mentioned earlier too about your partnership with in California with Santa Clara Valley. Have they gotten their vehicle operational yet?
So the original grant was for 2 vehicles for 1 year. Because of the cost, it's now a 1 vehicle for 2 years. So we're going to have it the first year, and then once our project's done, it transfers to California or to VTA. VTA has some other projects they're doing because they are a large transit compared to us, very large. So they've already started it in this world, and I'm not 100% sure how it relates to their other projects. I think one of them is on a campus, but I believe when our bus goes to them, it's going to connect with their VA hospital to try and make that connection. So kind of similar, and hospitals are involved. And then also a little bit larger vehicle than a traditional autonomous vehicle that you have seen now that was out there. Because we also, as part of the project, did not want a golf cart type sized vehicle. We wanted a full LTV or a small bus to do the service, so that it's a real bus versus a pre-made bus. And then the software and hardware could be used on any bus, not just that pre-designed smaller vehicle.
And speaking into that too, what other types of technologies were being pursued for the AV program? Did any specific factors lead to that selection?
We did have a basis for the type of vehicle we wanted. It had to go so fast, had to carry so many people, had to be electric, had to have, mobility enabled, so it could do wheelchairs. And there probably was a handful of other factors, but basically we wanted it as close to us being as a real bus as possible with the new technology added to it.
And how does the AV bus accommodate people with disabilities or mobility challenges, especially if there's not a driver on board to make sure that the wheelchair ramp comes down, or someone might need assistance getting in? How does it accommodate that?
So it will not do that. It's not automated. It will require someone to deploy it's actually a low floor bus, so it's just a ramp. There's not a wheelchair lift, which makes it easier for the passenger and for the driver. But yeah, that's another component that really needs to be investigated in the future, is how do you automate the wheelchair deployment? Because how does the passenger tell the bus that it needs a wheelchair when it's waiting at just a bus stop? So either it's got to be deployed every time it stops, and then, then you got the problem, once you can get on board, you've got to get secured, and you'd have to have some way to secure the wheelchair. And right now, the driver does the securements. We don't have an automated locking system on smaller vehicles. Now, on our larger buses, we've kind of worked that out where there is a system that you could, there's an automated locking mechanism for a wheelchair, but we've not deployed that on a smaller vehicle yet. So we've got kind of two problems there: getting it on and off, and securing it. So those are two issues that we're not addressing at all.
And the safety ambassador, is that what you called it?
Yes.
That's operating
safety operator, safety ambassador.
Exactly.
I wanted to call it a safety ambassador when we first started doing this, when I thought the bus would drive 100% of the time itself. But because the driver has to interact with the system to make it pull over and leave, now it's a safety operator.
Fair enough. Do the safety operators, have you seen them helping people get on board with your test bus, like if they have mobility challenges? Or
yes,
I guess can you walk us through that process a little bit?
a little bit. So I haven't seen them personally do it, but I've seen people use the system. Basically, the driver, when he sees there's a wheelchair, just when he pulls up like normally would, the doors open to let like a passenger getting on, and the ramp is it just folds down, so it's very simple. And then if the passenger can get on without any assistance, they pull onto the bus and back into where the wheelchair securements are. Then the operator has to hook the belts to the wheelchair to secure it and tighten it down. And then there's a belt lap for the passenger also, so they don't pull out of the chair. And then basically put the wheelchair back in, ramp back in place, and they go, and then reverse that process to get off. So the process isn't hard, it just isn't automated.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. Good to know. I ask because this is like such a unique project. Usually when you think automated vehicles, you think of like the Waymos or the individual cars that people get into, or even microtransit programs we've seen, but not really fixed route buses. Right. So this is really fascinating to hear about. And you spoke to this a little bit earlier, but can you go more in depth about procurement and operations? Have there been any unexpected operational challenges related to the vehicles themselves?
It's hard to differentiate what was vehicle problems and not vehicle problems.
Right.
Of course, when we brought our partner in to do the operational part, First Transit, I hope it's First Transit, not Transdev. I can't remember which one's which. I think it's Transdev now. Sorry, I'm going to go backwards. They came in and they did training. We secured a parking lot that they could train in. So the biggest hurdle for them has been actually keeping drivers employed. A lot of their drivers, not because of what they're doing, but a lot of them have gotten sick and had to leave, which is kind of weird and unfortunate for them. It had nothing to do with the job itself or working. It just, they got sick and chose to leave employment. So that's been probably the hardest operational aspect, is keeping a driver employed. And then once we did start deploying it, it was jumping back and forth between the non-autonomous vehicle and our backup vehicle between our non-autonomous vehicle, which is our backup vehicle, and the actual autonomous vehicle, because they are the same vehicle. The only difference is one has autonomous, one does not. So the driving conditions are all the same. It's just the autonomous portion and the ramp, everything. So just trying to figure out what vehicle they're allowed to use today, because if the autonomous vehicle is being worked on, trying to fix the issues we're having, they have to use the other one. We want them using the main vehicle because it's wrapped. It says it's the autonomous vehicle, where our vehicle, of course, doesn't say any of that. So you wouldn't know you were getting on an autonomous vehicle, whether it was working or not. So that's the biggest hurdle has been keeping drivers or safety operators employed.
That's a very unique circumstance. And I'm sorry to hear that drivers are getting sick and having to leave.
Yeah, it's been weird.
Yeah. Um, can you speak a little bit to about what key lessons WRTA has learned throughout planning, development, operations, etc. of the AV1 program?
So, because of our size, I think we may have taken on a little too much because we don't have anybody dedicated to this project. It's just one of their many hats they have to wear. It's like my maintenance department, gets involved because the AV provider isn't here in site. The transit operator provider isn't maintenance either. So we do a lot of the maintenance and repairs, which because of the issues, probably would have had it done, but they had to do that if the issues weren't there. But because we're deeply involved with that, which distracts from our operations. And again, we're small, so any changes like that really can disrupt us. And besides the mechanical and operation issues, technology wise, I think we may have been trying to get into AVs too soon. It hasn't had a lot of maturity in it. And I don't know if it's our provider that we happen to work with, or it's a lot of them. And I get to see quite a few when we have our other meetings with the other AIM awardees and their projects. So you kind of see what they're doing and some of the programs they have. And some of them also have had to stop doing it because of issues they ran into. My biggest lesson is I think AV autonomous would be much better in a on-demand service than a fixed route service. So if I had to do it again and we had to ask for the funding and redo the project, it would be for an AV service versus a fixed route service. And I think we would get better results that way. Now, again, would the vehicle be able to work? I don't know. We have to be in a small area because of the mapping and such. But I think it would have been a better project than trying to force autonomous onto a fixed route.
Well, you can think of yourself as a trailblazer for autonomous vehicles on a fixed route.
Or a warning.
Yeah. You mentioned the other AIM grantees also running into operational challenges. Do you, off the top of your head, know any of those challenges, what they were?
I believe one was battery related. The vehicles they got, battery had some battery issues and it couldn't get solved, so they canceled the program. The other project, I don't know what happened. They just stopped showing up to the meeting, and then I heard they
Oh,
canceled the project. And theirs was also a fixed route bus, from what I remember, but it was a large bus, and I don't know. They must have had similar issues of some sorts and couldn't get it to work, but I don't know exactly what it was.
interesting. I was curious if they were having similar issues to you all, but doesn't sound like it.
Definitely not the one probably with the battery. The other one may be it because I think it was the same provider, that
Mm.
AV stack provider, um, but it was a different bus. So, and it was a whole different. They were on a I think it was Connecticut. They had their buses were on a dedicated transit way, so it had dedicated stops. So that may have been a little better for AV. So that's why I don't know why they stopped it. Could have been again the bus because they were using a large bus and maybe just couldn't make it work.
Hmm. Understandable. And I guess kind of speaking to what you've learned from your peers, how has peer-to-peer learning or technical assistance from partners or other agencies supported your process of making this a project?
So directly, not much because we all basically tell our sob stories when we go around and talk about each project or explore the good news too, of course. And there had been a little bit of, suggestions like, hey, I've seen this, try this if because you're seeing the same thing. That we did not have that kind of help only because our issue was, I guess, unique to us or not found other places. But what I have seen from my perspective of seeing the other ones is what projects did better than others. And that's kind of why I lean toward the on-demand type, microtransit, whatever form you want to use it in, a much more plausible way of using the technology as it is now. And you kind of see that even in private endeavors like Waymo and Tesla. They're doing the on-demand stuff. I think the one thing they don't do, of course, is the wheelchair part, which we kind of have to do.
Right. And what about technical assistance? Have you learned, or what did you take away from technical assistance that helped support creating this project?
I don't know of any. Again, because what I'm I'm not the detailed person in the project. I'm kind of it's more of a let's do this and get it done
Mhm.
type position. So I know we've got support on the maintenance side for different things. I don't know specifically what it was. And then the operational side a little bit, but not much. And then our AV provider, I'm not really sure if they are the ones that really need the support, since it's their equipment that has to make it work. And I don't know. I don't think they've gotten enough there besides internally for themselves, which doesn't help.
Mhm.
They're a small organization too, which I think causes problems when you're only a few. I don't know how big they are, but a handful of people. And again, with technology that's not bleeding edge, but at least cutting edge.
Right. And what advice would you give to other transit agencies that are considering these AV initiatives?
Um, Probably they have to partner with someone who's already has a proven product. Think about the vehicle you're going to use, and definitely the use case of the product. Without those, your success is going to diminish immensely. Like ours, we're you know we're basically swimming upstream on these issues because we don't have any knowledge of what to do to make it work better, because we're at the mercy of the technology. We're at the mercy of different vendors working together. So it's so yeah, finding technology that at least has somewhat of a proven track record. If you want to enhance on it, at least the baseline is going to work.
Okay, well, thank you so much for speaking with us today.